Russian President Vladimir Putin has dismissed claims made by certain European Union officials that Russia harbors aggressive intentions towards its Western neighbors. Addressing a press conference in Bishkek, the Russian president pointed out that European leaders might be trying to create an illusion for their populations or catering to defense companies. Putin urges that Russia will cease hostilities once Ukrainian troops leave Russian territories they still occupy. Commenting on the ongoing peace talks, Putin said that Russia views the U.S.-drafted peace roadmap aimed at ending the hostilities positively on the whole, but a considerable amount of work would be required before it could be implemented in any form. He also pointed out that it is legally impossible to ink a peace accord without the current Ukrainian leadership, which is no longer legitimate. Now, viewers, for more on this, we are joined by Dr. Roxolana Zigon, Russia Director of CIR. She's speaking to us from Moscow. Dr. Zigon, thank you so much for speaking to Pakistan TV on this very pertinent matter. Now, understanding the situation at hand regarding this peace deal that is going to happen, and we have received the statements made by the Russian president, and he's dismissed these various claims made by the certain European Union officials that Russia harbors aggressive intentions towards the Western neighbors. Can we discuss a little bit more about how this statement has been received by the by the European officials?
Thank you for inviting me in order to give quite actual comments on the burning issue of this day. First of all, I would like to say that it's not a big surprise for Russia, and especially for the Russian President Vladimir Putin, the war flag begging European rhetoric. Unfortunately, so-called military illusions have become a solid ground of the failure or substitution of strategic insight and strategic vision from the side of the European Union that has been leaning or aligned to the NATO projecting of the future for the latest decades. Therefore, whatever we're listening from the side of Brussels is not surprising us. More often, and moreover, we are more concerned about the stubbornness of the European officials who are not willing to promote a diplomatic stance between European Union capitals and Moscow. It testifies that between two superpowers, I mean the United States and the European Union, which is becoming weaker and weaker day after day, especially in regard to the Ukrainian battlefield, between two superpowers, they should stay only one. Undoubtedly, there is a clear message that United States and Donald Trump's administration, which has declared America first, previews that superpower to stay on the historical and geopolitical stage is definitely United States, not the European Union. And we have been tracing the latest peace talks in Geneva, but also is a clear evidence that United States are moving step by step every day far away from the Ukrainian agenda, and it supports and military assistance to Ukraine weakens every day. It means that European Union is going to stay not only in a state of elusive mind, but also in a state of a vacuum of strategic insight for quite a long time. Therefore, they risk to create a situation when Washington and Moscow will be leading the peace talks in the nearest future.
Absolutely, Dr. Zigon. I want to refer to, the statement of the illegitimate government of the Ukraine, and understanding this a little bit more, could you help us shed light on how this could lead to future instability in terms of agreement with reference to the current Ukrainian administration?
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has underlined that issue for quite a long time, trying to highlight that the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is completely illegitimate. Actually, Ukraine has had a chance to organize elections to upbring a legal presidential power in the country. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. So they have been jungling with the elections and with the opinion of the population of Ukraine, and trying to actually go along the European agenda and its allies. Therefore, the Russian president insists on this important legal issue that, of course, Moscow can sign any kind of agreement, I mean, any option of agreement, but we're afraid that it will be not fully legal if it's going to be signed with the current Ukrainian regime. Therefore, there is a strong message that should actually leave an important stance in the minds of the Europeans and American side, that it's important to promote a legitimate agenda of power in Ukraine. Therefore, we can also say that in Russia, despite the fact that Russia has been involved for quite a long time in Ukrainian conflict, has succeeded to perform and to demonstrate to the whole world the possibility to perform its elections in a legal way. Therefore, there is a disparity of understanding in the mindset of how this kind of peace deal should be sealed down.
Dr. Zigon, touching upon the fact that a considerable amount of work would be required before it could be implemented in any form, being that this is a U.S. drafted peace roadmap, where do we see the main constructive elements in this document, and which points require the most revision from Russia's perspective?
From Russian perspective, at this very moment, we don't see the peace plan as a kind of accomplished plan. We see different pieces of construction materials. We see a proposal, or let's say the outlines of that kind of possible project that can be called a peace plan, actually, something that can be signed and sealed down. Therefore, we have heard only about 28 points of the plan that has been discussed in Washington and between Washington, Ukraine, and European leaders in Geneva. But still, these elements are not accomplished. But they are kind of introduction towards a legal discussion, a serious discussion of that kind of form that can be appropriate for all the parties. And the good news is that Moscow is inclined to express a positive attitude, positive approach towards the upcoming meeting next week with the representative of the Donald Trump's administration, with Mr. Steve Witkoff. It means that we're going to make a step forward in order to proceed with the peace talks.
Absolutely. Dr. Zigon, the Western media we've witnessed often portrays Russia as unwilling to negotiate. But given this, this peace, 28 peace plan, let's talk a little bit about the remarks that are required for the serious work on this peace proposal, especially when it comes to the special efforts that Moscow is making to keep the diplomatic track alive.
Moscow has been keeping a diplomatic track from the very beginning, but Moscow has been insisting on being heard, and not being heard in a partial way, but in a complete way, as an equal partner. Unfortunately, the European Union, which are our closest partner, and historically, unfortunately, has been not making or learning its lessons, completely denies a diplomatic stance that we are proclaiming on a completely daily basis from Moscow, and growing its military, let's say, or defense power and aggressive rhetoric against any kind of motion that Moscow tries to implement and to promote in order to finally reach a peace deal with Ukraine. But it's not possible to do without Moscow, without position of Moscow and its geopolitical vision.
Dr. Zigon, I want to touch a little bit upon the public opinion when it comes to the disconnect regarding the Russian president's statement that, the dismissal of these claims made by certain European Union officials, this growing disconnect between the European citizens. Many of them want peace, and their governments, which continue to escalate the tensions.
I think there is a very weak interconnection between the population, public opinion in the European Union and the European government. I think the power distribution in the European Union today, which has completely lost its verity, it's a big problem. And I think it reflects on the strategic attitude, strategic thinking in Brussels. All that kind of rhetoric, war rhetoric that we have been listening for a long time, actually considering a very bad economic shape, tells us that to grow the military might of the European Union and to continue to promote that kind of aggressive rhetoric against Russia is absolutely not leading nowhere. It's a dead end. Therefore, we assume that sooner or later, the public opinion in Europe will be more radicalized and will be more willing to reach other forms, let's say soft power forms, in order to find a dialogue with Moscow, because people in Europe are absolutely not in favor of any war with Russia. This is a fact. And if you talk to simple people, or even with the expert community in different parts of Europe, you will hear more or less of the same position. It means there is a really serious crack or clash of interest between the European officials and the public opinion.
Absolutely. Dr. Zigon, one last thing when it comes to my mind is basically how Russia is interpreting the continued supply of Western weapons to the Ukraine at a time when there is a peace negotiation that is supposedly underway.
Russia is actively monitoring all the actions that are going on the border between Ukraine and European Union. We also see that the United States is willing to diminish its military support to Ukraine, but still, from another side, another hand, the United States, even after a meeting between President Trump and President Putin in Anchorage in Alaska, that seemed to be a successful, actually, meeting, a successful introduction to the peace talks. Afterwards, shortly, we have seen a new portion of sanctions against oil companies of Russia. Therefore, we register a kind of twilight attitude and approach towards this kind of issue. Therefore, we are quite cautious and very attentive on all the declarations that are made either in Washington or in Brussels.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Roxolana Zigon, Director for the Center International Research in Moscow, for speaking to Pakistan TV on this very pertinent matter where the Russian President, Mr. Vladimir Putin, has dismissed the claims made by certain European Union officials that Russia harbors aggressive intentions towards its Western neighbors.